Welcome to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm so excited for season 2 and the great guests you're going to hear from, their struggles, how they overcame their struggles, their triumphs. Through personal and business life, I think they're tied together, and we're going to share great stories about that. This show isn't just about me. It takes a lot of good people working with me. Among them is my partner, H7 Network, and Clay Hicks. Building relationships, building community is the mission of H7 Network. They want to create a network of champions where everybody wins. Find out more at h7network.com. And we hope to motivate you, inspire you, and educate you through our show. Enjoy the show. We'll talk to you on the other side. Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Got a fantastic guest today, a true servant. He's been through a lot in his life, but he's giving back to the society and giving back to his clients. I want to welcome Jeff to the show.
Hello. How are you today?
Good, Jeff. Thank you so much for being on. Let's get started at the beginning. Why all this coaching and helping people and helping with their business?
It really starts with a conversation I had. Well, first of all, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been doing this for 5 decades. I actually launched my first entrepreneurial venture when I was 12 years old in 8th grade. Reselling candy to kids in junior high school. I'm a military brat, so my dad was in the Air Force, and we had moved back to the United States from Germany. My dad was stationed in Syracuse, New York. And so met some kids who said, hey, you can make some money working at the commissary, sacking groceries for tips. So I went, did that. And, I was very good at, I was just so motivated to make money that I was probably one of their better workers. So at a certain point, the Lifesavers company came to the commissary. They had some new products that they wanted to put into the marketplace, and they went to commissary management and said, "Hey, we'd like to hire a kid to just stock our displays and keep them neat. Would you recommend someone?" And they said, "Oh, you need to talk to Jeff." And so I got hired for that. And as I'm looking at the stuff I'm stocking. The big candy at the time, I'm a kid from the early 70s, was Charm Suckers, Charms Lollipops, was huge. And so I know all the kids when I go to school would have them. And so this was one of the products that I was stocking. And I noticed, it was sold in bulk at the commissary. And I looked at the price and realized I've always been great at math. So I realized that the price that I could buy this stuff in bulk was literally, like a third of the cost of what kids were paying retail in stores. So something said to me, and I don't know where this came from because I don't have any entrepreneurial mentors and there were no entrepreneurs in the family. But I said, well, I'm going to take all my tip money, buy as many bags of candy as I can. I'm going to double the price of the candy and take it to school and sell it. It'll still be a third to 50% less than what kids are paying retail. And so I did that, and it was a huge success. So that was kind of my first start, but kind of fast forward to the end of my career, my very last venture, and I've done more than 20, was a cloud computing company. I launched it in 2007 with 2 business partners, and we were able to transform this into one of the fastest growing companies in the country, and sold it 6 years after we launched it. And that literally was a decade ago. So I'm selling that business, and I just happen to be having lunch with a very good friend who's a business coach. And during the lunch, he's like, "Jeff, when you die, what do you want your legacy to be?" And I'm like, "What kind of morbid question is that to ask me at lunchtime?" But as I thought about it, so I have 2 daughters. One's 20 and one's 25. So obviously they're 10 years younger at the time. And so as I was thinking about how do I answer that question, I really put my answer, I framed it in reference to how I could use my God-given talents to impact the world positively for them and their generation. So then it became, I'd actually realized at the age of 49 that I was put on earth to be an entrepreneur, right? So, and this was through a series of failing in corporate America, failing at multiple entrepreneurial ventures because I was doing them part-time. And so once I realized that, I knew that, what I was put on earth to do.
Yeah.
And so when I was answering that question, it was like, okay, I was meant to be an entrepreneur. And the more I read about the impact entrepreneur has on, our economy, I realized that this is a way I could really make a huge impact on the world, and so for me, it was, what I'm going to do is I'm going to encourage and mentor as many people that want to do this crazy thing called run your own business as possible, because particularly if I'm working with prospective and daily entrepreneurs who are coming from communities that are disproportionately impacted by, poverty, crime, unemployment, and I'm able to help them figure out how to responsibly scale growth exponentially and exit and then create generational wealth for their families. Not only will I impact them and their families, but they're going to impact the community as well, so that's kind of what leads to it. But just, get a little nerdish here for a second. I'd read something years ago that basically said in the last 35 years, all net economic job growth globally has come from businesses less than 5 years old or small businesses, right? I read another, article that said we all suffer from implicit bias. So we tend to hire in our own self-image, because that makes us feel comfortable. And then I read another article that said, we spend in the United States $500 billion a year, helping people who are living at or below the federal poverty level. And so, I kind of put all these three things together and I said, okay, well, if small businesses are creating all the jobs and people hire in their own self-image, what if we identify, this is my quick solution. So I'm not saying this isn't flawed at all, but it's just real quick. It came to mind was, what if we identified 500,000 entrepreneurs in the United States and we invested $1 million each into each of their businesses, which would spend your $500 billion. And then we provided them with the training to understand how to scale to 10 million in annual revenues. So now a company on average will hire 10 employees per $1 million in annual revenue. So now each entrepreneur would be creating 100 jobs. The number of people living at or below the federal poverty level is a little over 43 million in the United States. So, but doing what I just mentioned, we would actually create 50 million jobs, So particularly if these jobs are paying meaningful wages. And then, as I said, part of the process of educating the entrepreneur to scale is to get to an exit that allows them to extract capital out of the business so that they can secure their and their family's future and create generational wealth. So that's kind of been my mission, and that's what I do now,
It's interesting. You went from lollipops to cloud service.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
50 cent lollipops to $1 million cloud service.
But, right. Yeah. I realize that, as much as we think we're in control, we're not, and so I like years ago, I just put my hands up and I'm like, yeah, whatever direction you want to take me, I'm
going to follow your path. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I see the course behind you. Let's talk about that course that you have. It's so interesting to me.
Yeah. So so when my last venture, I mentioned that I at 49 realized I was meant to be an entrepreneur. So as I said, my parents come from, they grew up during the Great Depression. So they weren't taking risks in their careers, and they didn't raise their children to take risks either. So I'm the youngest of four. We're all overeducated. We were all raised to work in corporate America and work for someone else, right? So I've had really good corporate jobs, but I've gotten fired from every single one of them, you know. And I was always doing entrepreneurial things on the side, but I was doing them part time. So none of that stuff worked. And as I said, when I hit the age of 49, and something dawned on me that something's not working. You need to do something radically different. I had actually had a similar epiphany probably 15 years earlier, and thought that oh, okay, well, go back and get an MBA. That'll change things. And it didn't. I just failed on a bigger scale, and so I'm 49 at this point, having the second epiphany, and I wasn't quite sure where I was going to go, but I just ended up getting a call out of the blue from a young guy. He was in his early 20s, and he's someone that I had actually hired into a former client, and so. I hadn't spoken to him in a couple of years, and so he gets me on the phone. He says, I just had lunch with my brother-in-law, and we have a tech idea, but we don't know what we need to do because we've never done anything entrepreneurial, and we know you have. And so could we take you to dinner and pick your brain? So that dinner led to me writing their business plan. And, by the time we finished the business plan, then they turned around and said, look, we're in our early 20s. We're in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This isn't Silicon Valley. It's not a tech-centric city. No one's going to take us seriously. So they're like, we need someone with gray hair to run the company. Would you consider buying equity in the business and running the company? And so I decided to take them up on this. So what was different was this was the first time I did anything entrepreneurial full-time. I left corporate America altogether. And I'm only doing this, right? The second thing that I did, because I was like, there's still something else that you need to tweak. So fortunately, when I got my MBA, I attended the Wharton School of Business. One of my majors was entrepreneurial management. So I had taken 5 courses from 5 different professors. So I actually went back to University of Pennsylvania's campus to talk to my 5 professors. And I asked them all the same one question. And it was, if you were to give me a piece of advice that if I implemented it would maximize the probability I'd succeed, what would that advice be? And so I had 5 great conversations. Every professor gave me a list of books they wanted me to read about scaling growth.
Wow.
So I take the time to read all the books, before I launch the business. And so now I've, read the last book, had all these conversations, and it occurred to me, I'm like, I keep hearing some of the same themes over and over and over again from entrepreneurs that have written books about what they attribute their success in entrepreneurship to. So I'm like, okay, I got me a piece of paper. I'm jotting down all these things. I came up with 6 things that I had heard repeatedly. And I said, okay, so now we're going to launch this business. I'm going to infuse these 6 things into the business to see what happens. So we did that. Lo and behold, everything worked. So as I said, we're a perennial, Inc. 5000 winner, Philly 100 winner. We were a semifinalist for Entrepreneur of the Year. I'm being interviewed on television, radio, magazines, newspapers, and as I said, the company is doubling in revenue every single year. We sold the company 6 years later, and so while I was running the business, but much more so since I sold the business, I literally every single day have a minimum of one entrepreneur reach out to me and ask me some question about that business. They're like, "How did you partner with Dell? How did you partner with Unisys? How did you get a contract, a multi-year contract to manage the school district of Philadelphia's, computer, systems? Yeah. All these different things that and so I would go into an elaborate discussion of what I did, because I had a methodology, and every conversation would end the same. They're like, "You have way too much knowledge in your brain. You need to write a book." So fortunately, I knew someone in the publishing industry, reached out to him, started the process of writing my book. And this friend is introducing me to people in his ecosystem all along. And so he introduces me to a company based in Seattle, Washington, that takes author content and converts it into online coursework. So the CEO of that organization said, Jeff, stop writing your book. Young people don't like to read. They need to be entertained with videos. So let's work on your course, get it done. And oh, by the way, by the time you finish your course, you'll have written your book anyway. And so I pivoted and took all of 2021 creating my course. I then had so every time I make any big decision in life or in business, I enlist the services of a focus group to kind of help me make the decision. So I had a focus group take the course first quarter of last year. And the feedback I got was, this course is fantastic. Any entrepreneur could use this knowledge, but no one knows who you are outside of Philadelphia. So you need to work on personal branding. And I really didn't know what to do at that point. So I just started reading about personal branding, and, and everything I was reading was saying, create content and distribute it on social media. So I was able to find the site called Quora.com that is a question and answer site. So, I just went in and said, hey, send me every question you have about entrepreneurship, small business, and startups. And I just started answering questions every day. And I did it all of last year. And then I would distribute it on the platform. And then I'm speaking at a conference towards the end of last year, and someone in the audience reaches out to me and he's like, have you thought of reselling your content? And I'm like, no, not really. Should I? He's like, well, you could write an ebook. He says, why don't you take your most viewed content and put it into an ebook and sell it on Amazon? So I actually just released my first ebook a couple of weeks ago on Amazon, and it's the top 10 questions that people, viewed and on Quora last year, So, I mean, the great thing is I answered so many questions. I literally have enough content for 50 more ebooks.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So the goal this year has been to take the content that I haven't released and convert it into videos, and then release that I actually just launched a YouTube channel. I'm thinking about TikTok, because I know that, video, people respond much better to video than they do to written content.
Yeah. No, I like that. It's a great story.
But the question you asked was about the course, and the course is when I mentioned the 6 attributes that all successful entrepreneurs infuse into businesses to achieve success, the course teaches you those 6 things, right? So,
that's great.
First thing is, I won't go unless you want me to. I won't go into all 6, but the first thing is, all successful entrepreneurs figure out what they're passionate about and build businesses around their passion. What they understand that the rest of the population doesn't is that, when you do what you love what you do. And your love for what you do permeates everything you do, which is incredibly attractive to the rest of humanity, right? So, and this is why when you talk to successful entrepreneurs, first thing you'll probably notice is how incredibly happy they are. It's because, they're in their minds, they're not working. This is what they do every day comes as natural to them as eating, breathing, sleeping, right?
Right. If it comes from the heart, it lasts much longer and has more of an impact.
Right.
Of course, there's 5 other things they need to do, but we'll start with that with a teaser. How can people access this course?
So my website is www.thinkbigwithgeoffreykent.com. So Geoffrey is the old English spelling. It starts with a Geoffrey. Thank my parents for that. So but yeah, if they go to the website, when they go to the website, I have a pop-up that appears within like 10 seconds of going to the site. If they leave their name and email address, they'll get an email sent to them that will give them a link to download a free checklist that I've built that gives you let's say a 20,000 level view of the 6 things that you should do. So it's kind of like I'm giving you the blueprint, but not,
The
I'm
details.
giving you the recipe, but
Yeah,
I'm not baking
exactly.
the cake with
Yeah,
you.
you're
at
not
that.
cooking. Yeah, you're giving an
Right, right,
overview, which is
right.
here's what we're going to work on, but you need to jump in. And I
Yeah,
like that because that's what it
yeah,
should be.
right.
Because if it
And then,
resonates with somebody, then they can buy the course or work with you
exactly.
on the course
Yeah,
and do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, because and listeners, look at the background, and you guys on YouTube can see it. The people on the podcast, you're going to see. You don't see an online course to launch and grow your business by a million per year. Let me ask you, you guys think about this in the listeners audience, how many of you like make $1 million in income a year or sales, excuse me.
yeah, yeah.
I'm just going to leave it at that. I mean, and you stand by that because you've done that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. The cloud computing company did much
Yeah.
better than that. So
Yeah. And that's why I brought Jeff on is I have no problem him saying that and putting it on his background because he's proven it.
yeah,
It's funny. People that are business coaches and never run a business.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a pet peeve of mine, and I apologize for any coaches listening, but experience is such the best teacher, and that's what you are, Jeff.
Right, right. Well, I actually, a couple things. I actually taught entrepreneurship at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania from 2009 to 2012, and in that same period of time, I was judging Drexel University's business plan competition. So I, one, I've done this over and over and over again. I failed at it and learned from failing till I got to the point where I actually succeeded doing it. But I've also taught this, so I understand kind of having been as an entrepreneur, having been a successful entrepreneur, I understand what is practical and what can practically be applied in real life and what can't. So to your point, one of the things that bothers me and my pet peeve with education, particularly education of entrepreneurship, is that lack of, someone actually doing this and then saying, hey, this is what you should do, not understanding that in real life that's not applicable. It can't be done, right? And I can't think of the name of the movie. There's a really good movie that Rodney Dangerfield was in, whereas I think it's like Back to School or something.
Yeah.
And he goes to school with his son, and there's a particular scene that is just like so true, where they're in the classroom and the professor is trying to give them a construction business example. And he starts going through all, everything's textbook. Oh, you got to do this, that, and the other. And every point Rodney Dangerfield is countering him. He's like, oh, you can't do that. You got to deal with the Teamsters, so, you can't do that because, and the professor's like livid, but all the kids start listening to Rodney because it's like they realize he's done this. He knows what he's talking about.
You've done all the failures, Jeff, which I love. You're putting out here's I've failed, right, so you don't have to.
Yeah, well, that's part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
You are going to fail, and you're going to fail repeatedly. But you don't want to dwell on the failure. What you actually want to do is learn from the failure. It's like, what can I take from this experience to apply to the next, so that what you want to do is make sure you just don't repeat whatever reason forced you to fail in that previous venture. Don't bring that with you. Understand what it was so that you can avoid that going forward. You're probably going to run into some other obstacle, that it's going to force you to fail in the next venture, but that's fine. Again, it's more knowledge that you have. And again, you get to a point where everything's happened, and you figured out how to overcome everything that's happened. And you finally get to that point where, it all works,
The rocket ship.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we're running out of time here because I can listen to you all day. I mean, I'm just thinking all my stories, what I've done in my life. But is the website the best way for people to reach out? Because I know they're going to want to reach out to you.
Yeah. The website is the best way because all my contact information is on the website as well. So there's an about page, and from there, they can get my email address and all the social media,
everything's
channels,
there,
all that kind of thing. So yeah, I would just have someone go to the website first.
I'm going to get a little wild here, Jeff. I'm going to do you a big favor. The first 3 people that reach out to Jeff about the course, you don't have to buy it, but just reach out to him. I'm going to send you a gift. So Jeff's going to reach out to me. If you mention the podcast or my name or both, I'm going to mail you a gift. I'll get your contact information, reach out to you, and get your mailing address. Because what Jeff's doing, we've had some long conversations. He's true to the word. You follow what he's doing, $1 million per year could be in your bank account. And I want all for you listeners out there. So with that being said, we're right at the end of the time, but can I get one more favor from you?
Sure, absolutely.
If you gave my listeners one more piece of advice, you've given us so many golden nuggets, but one more piece of advice for their journey in life and business.
Yeah. So, if you're a true entrepreneur, you'll get this, right? So, because I had the corporate career and I was trying to do entrepreneur, failing at both, right? But when I finally succeeded, what I realized, reflecting back on all my experiences, was so this is the piece of advice, is that the traits that get you ostracized in corporate America are the exact same traits that will make you wildly successful as an entrepreneur. It's entrepreneurs are change agents. They're disruptors. In organized corporate environments, that's not received well. But that's what, again, will make you wildly successful in the entrepreneurial, side of things. So, yeah, that's the one piece of advice I would give everyone.